All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, we have the one, the only, the legendary Bay Area hip-hop artist. We got the one, the only Paris right here live on the line. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I first and foremost have to say quickly before we jump into this interview, I've been a fan for many, many years, so thank you so much for your contribution to hip-hop. You gave birth to so many legendary classic songs and albums.
Yeah, I appreciate that, really. Thank you.
And I gotta ask you, like, taking you right back to the beginning, like, what actually inspired you to actually get into the music industry?
Loving music and, just being taken by the new genre. You know, when I first started hip-hop, when I first started music, I didn't really do hip-hop. I was just an instrumentalist and played in a few bands back in high school, and then hip hop came, and it took me there, you know. And I was really taken with East Coast hip hop more so than West Coast hip hop out the gate because it took us a little while to catch up. But I really got the bug for hip hop when I was in college, and I was a DJ at KDVS at my school, and would correspond with Def Jam a lot back in the day, and they would just get at you directly, and in dealing with them, I started to see how hip hop artists could be established and have their own respective personalities instead of it just being nursery rhymey, and yeah. That's what did it for me.
And it must have been really cool as well, just being able to be in high school and have your own radio station. I don't think they do that nowadays. Back in high school.
This was college. This was at Davis, and in fact, DJ Shadow used to come down to my show, and he was probably maybe 14 years old at the time, and I was maybe 19, and that was kind of the beginnings of it, and I would listen to all these projects that would be sent to me from this cat Dave Funkenklein, rest in peace. He used to work at Def Jam, and he used to send me, the Beasties and the full Def Jam, early Def Jam lineup, and that's what did it because I saw that they were all their own distinct entities. You had Public Enemy, and you had the Beastie Boys, and you had Cool J, and you had Original Concept. And they all were in their respective lanes, and the label anyway, treated the artist seriously, in terms of artist development. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah. And then, as time went on and my political awareness was sparked, that's what made me go that route. And been doing it ever since.
And when you brought up DJ Shadow a few moments ago, that was actually in my question list. I have to ask you, what was it like actually just being a mentor to a young DJ like himself? And of course, how did you guys actually get connected? Was it just college?
I don't know if I would consider myself necessarily a mentor. He was pretty baked in the cake out the gate. He knew what he was doing. He had a little 4-track mixer, and he would come up with cassettes, and I want to get them played on the air. And he lived in Davis. He was actually, I don't know if he was born there, but he was definitely living there at the time. And Davis is a small college town in northern Cali. And we just, kind of struck up a friendship. He was cool. He was into it, and this was at a time in hip-hop where not everybody was on hip-hop's page. You got to remember that, There were a lot of radio stations that wouldn't play hip-hop. And in fact, I got a lot of pushback from even the school station because of that very reason. It just wasn't for everybody. They were concerned about the profanity, and everybody had their preconceived notions about what hip hop was. But Shadow was into it, and he was good. And he had probably one of the biggest record collections I've ever seen. And his people like to say that I gave him his break or something, but that's not the case. He was already getting down with Hollywood records, and I think correct me if I'm wrong. I'm Enemy. And then, you know, kind of went off on his own respective lane. I mean, his own trajectory kind of just took him pretty far, you know, and I'm glad to see he's been successful as he did. But yeah, all good. That was it with that.
And also, your first single was actually banned by MTV, and the one thing I've always wanted to ask you was, what actually transpired to make MTV actually ban your first single?
I have no idea. Because I'm not the one that serviced it. You know, I was on Tommy Boy at the time. And I think it was just the imagery. You know, I know we went back and forth with the guns. There was like a version with guns, and there was a version without guns. And me and Axl Rose actually got into it for a time. They had, and he, you know, there was some footage of him in there. They were trying to change things, and MTV just kept coming back with these red flags. And then they just finally banned it outright. You know, as an artist, when the label keeps, you know, the label would keep telling me that they wanted to change things, Obviously, as an artist, that didn't sit well with me because, you know, I gave them the vision that I envisioned, right? And so that was kind of the beginnings of my souring on being down with, you know, kind of a corporate back label. And it was kind of a precursor of things to come.
And I have to ask you as well, like, did MTV, after a couple of years, did they happen to air the video, or was it completely, like, never aired whatsoever on that broadcasting station?
Yeah, they got on it pretty heavy for a while, and I was in a bunch of they used to have these documentaries. Remember, well, I don't know if you remember this. There was this dude, Kurt Loder, that worked there, who used to do the Weekend Rock. And he had all of these sub-shows, which were like mini documentaries for MTV. And, yeah, I was in a gang of those. And, you know, they would always reference political awareness and reality rap, they called it at the time. And, you know, I was one of the go-to artists that they would feature for that. So it kind of worked itself out. But that's not to say that, you know, they continued their support. I mean, there was a time where I was all over commercial radio, too, you know, with that project. But that seems so far in the rear view right now. And that's cool. Because I think commercial radio is in the rear view for a lot of people, too. So there you go.
Hey, well, at least MTV got off their high horses after a while and actually gave you the opportunity with that video, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It was cool.
And also in the mid-1990s... Oh, sorry about that, Paris.
The thing about, you know, a lot of these outlets, the thing about radio stations, the thing about, obviously, college radio stations, and even record labels, is that there's a really high turnover with the staff. And so, you know, the people that you might be feuding with at any given point in time might not be there in a couple of years. They might not be there later this year. And so, you know, it was always kind of perceived that I was at war with, you know, Time Warner. I was at war with you know, these various entities, MTV, but the same people don't even work there after a while, you know, so no harm, no foul.
And also in the mid-1990s, Paris, you actually signed a major artist and distribution deal with Priority Records, where you actually released your third EP, Gorilla Funk. I have to ask you, what's the story and inspiration behind that iconic record?
I mean, I don't know if there's any real story behind it. Sleeping with the Enemy was my second album that came out, and sold a lot of units and got the attention of Priority. And Priority approached me about being an artist on their label, and I was, you know, freshly independent and pretty successful as a result of my independence. I wasn't really trying to be down with any entity again. And they sweetened the pot by saying, you know, I could come and I could develop artists on my label there. And, you know, the Conscious Daughters was kind of born out of that. And it was a good run. And as far as the Gorilla Funk record itself, you know, G-Funk was huge at the time. And, you know, I just wanted to spread my wings musically and try something different, but still, have the message infused in the music. But, I was trying to go in different directions with it.
And I have to say as well, one of my favorite tracks off that record is actually One Time for Your Mind. I have to say, I think when I was younger, I actually played the living heck out of that record, and most definitely, I think I wore out like 2 or 3 copies of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I like that record. I mean, I listen back at some things in my discography, and I wince. I think everybody, I think every artist, has their sore spot, and then, and then there's some things that I'm very proud of. So, always evolving.
And also, after that record, you actually released up-and-coming female hip-hop duo, the Conscious Daughters. I have to ask you,
Right.
how did you get connected with the Conscious Daughters? And of course, what was it like working with those 2 amazing ladies?
They were great. I heard a demo tape, a demo cassette, back in the day. Somebody played it for me, and we met and we vibed, our personalities vibed. I said, I'm starting this label, and, I'll run you guys through the label and through my form of distribution with Priority, and they were down with it, and we went in and made the magic happen. I know that I wanted to have a female perspective on the label, too. That's the thing, is that, I had a roster full of dudes, and, I wanted to have a female perspective to speak on issues in the community, and to engage people from that viewpoint.
And I have to say as well, those 2 ladies actually was real raw lyrical MC. So I gotta say that most definitely was a really great choice, actually signing those 2 amazing individuals.
Yeah, no, they can definitely spit. They Carol passed away. Special One passed away a few years back, and so they disbanded. And I know that Carla, CMG, she's still active. But yeah, it was a good run. It was a period in time that I look back on fondly.
And also, in the late 1990s, you actually retired from the music industry to pursue a career as a stockbroker. The one thing I've always wondered was what made you actually decide to quit the music industry and venture into that trade?
Well, my background, my degree is in managerial economics, and that was always kind of the path that I was going on anyway. And a lot of people can't reconcile the fact that I was involved in the financial markets and the music that I make. But, I'm all about taking all the tools at our disposal and using them accordingly. And, my ability to navigate the financial markets created a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunity for people, and, paid for scholarships and, low-cost housing assistance and all kinds of things that I've been involved with out here. And it funded my label and set me up to be able to do pretty much whatever I want to musically. And, I pretty heavy off into real estate. I don't deal with the financial markets all that much anymore. But I always viewed music as something that I wanted to really do the way that I wanted to do it, and I'm very passionate about the kind of things that I want to say. I also know that because a lot of what I create is incendiary and pushes the envelope much further than a lot of people want to stand next to, I have to be able to be built to support it on my own and to put it out and really be sure that it saturates the marketplace in a way that it deserves, and the only way that I can do that is to be completely independent. It was just another, to answer your question, it was just another way of embracing the mantra of do it yourself.
And also, your anti-war anthem, "What Would You Do," brought up raw truth about the 9/11 attacks that happened in New York City back in 2001. I have to
Right.
ask you, what made you actually decide to call out the United States government, and what makes you think the attacks were pre-planned? Because I have to say, I strongly agree with your theory.
Yeah, following the money, following the ties that key officials had. Now you're asking me about something that I haven't brushed up on, obviously in 15 years, but at the time I could connect the dots with Cheney and Halliburton. I could connect the dots with the $6 trillion worth of oil in the Caspian Sea that needed to be reached by pipeline that was ran through Afghanistan by Halliburton. I was able to see that troops were deployed basically to protect these oil fields and these oil reserves, and it just became very apparent to me that it was a self-inflicted wound that people were strategically poised to benefit from. And I was able to just draw my own conclusions based on what I read and what I was exposed to.
And the one thing I have to ask pertaining to that album cover, did like the U.S. government ever like contact you and tell you you're not releasing that record? Did they ever try and shut you down for that record?
You know what? So this is the thing with censorship in music. Back when I did Bush Killer and I did Sleeping with the Enemy, and Ice-T did Cop Killer and Cool G Rap came out with it, and Live Squad and all these other artists came out, we were all respectively booted from our major label backing. And it was because, pretty much the block was hot. Cesar Lois Tucker was out, and she was, barking about content and music. And the parental, PMRC, I think was the name of it, with Tipper Gore, came out, and that's when records started having parental advisory stickers on them, and censorship it started to become self-imposed by labels, but most notably, every time that somebody came out and had something to say about a project, the sales would go through the roof because they couldn't formally censor it. They could just, certain outlets would just decide they didn't want to carry it or something to that effect, but they wouldn't just outright ban anything. And so those people that did have the shot to carry whatever it was that was being banned did really well because, the audience was there, and there was kind of an insatiable appetite for a lot of material that people thought was taboo. You know what I'm saying? And so now, later on, instead of creating a big fuss over it, material that higher ups deem as being something they don't want to get behind or something that they want to effectively censor, they simply ignore. And that's kind of the shock value for most things is gone now, unless you are of a really young generation that hasn't been exposed to things in the past. But talking about, there was a time when talking about shooting, you shoot a cop in a record, and that was, the sky was falling, but that's pretty much 90% of hip hop records getting out with something about police on, for years and years and years and years after the initial dust up over it, So it just effectively, as media consolidated and labels disappeared and outlets disappeared and things shrank and came together, and now we have 4 major labels and a handful of media conglomerates that control most outlets like Clear Channel and what is it called, Radio One or something like that. You only see or Entertainment One. There are only a handful of outlets that and a slot of spaces available for whatever it is they want to put out, and more often than not, that's something that is just easily digestible by So I don't even look for those outlets anymore. You know, it's not that they're censoring. It's just that they're choosing to do what they want to do, and I choose to do what I want to do. You know, I'm very comfortable in my lane because people that are F with me, honestly, they continue to, and they know what to expect of me, and you know, and I give them what they want, and I represent kind of the voice of the voiceless, especially especially with hip hop. I'm definitely swimming upstream in 2020.
And speaking of 2020, jumping along the timeline here a little bit, you actually released your brand new record titled Safe Space Invader. I have to ask you, can you tell our listeners a bit more about that record? And of course, where can we actually buy or stream us for ourselves a copy?
It's available everywhere. It's available on all major streaming networks, platforms. It's available from all major sales outlets, and it's available from indie retailers and from my site directly through web fulfillment, GorillaFunk.com. It was just time to speak out again. You know, it had been a minute since I put out a record before, and God knows there's a lot to say in Trump's America, especially in 2020. And you know, sadly, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, but sadly, you know, somebody made an observation and said, you know what, man, you've been making the same record for 30 years. Yeah, pretty much. And that's sad that every last one of the records in my catalog can be played at any point in time and the content still be relevant. And it's because things don't change, or they change very slowly, you know, and we've had a past few years that have been regressive in nature to the point where, you know, a lot of people are really in a place of despair, emotionally and financially and otherwise. And you know, this record speaks to those grievances. And you know, everything is not fun and games and shits and giggles. You know, there's got to be some meat on the bone for people that want something more from entertainment, and especially this particular form of entertainment that, you know, for a long period of time was rooted in rage. It was protest music, and that doesn't get the shine that it used to get. And you know, I'm doing my best to just continue to hold the torch for that.
And I have to ask you, Paris, what is next for you? Is there any new projects other than Safe Space Invader? Anything else you want to promote? We still have you here live on the radio?
Yeah, there's my artist T-Cash is coming out with an album. I have a George Clinton album that I'm putting out on Gorilla Funk. I have a hell of stuff in production at Netflix, and you know, I actually have a lot of things in the pipeline. You know, just waiting on the new year to kick in, because nobody releases new music in the fourth quarter for the most part in any given year, because it gets kind of lost in the sauce of holiday releases. But yeah, we hit the ground running next year, and I'll definitely be in touch with you.
And also, Paris, this is the time in the interview, quickly, right before I wrap things up, that I give a chance for the individual that comes on the radio station, just a chance to give shoutouts to whomever they want to give shoutouts to, and of course your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated, everything Gorilla Funk Records, and of course Paris as well.
Yeah, I don't have any shoutouts to anybody, but I would say the listeners, thank you for listening, and I would say thank you for supporting, obviously. And for anybody that wants to follow social media handles, things of that nature, they're all on GorillaFunk.com. So there, and you can access everything from Instagram to Facebook and Spotify, Twitter, anything that you may want to know about that is Gorilla Funk, and counter-establishment messages that we put out. I mean, this is what we do. So, yeah.
And I want to say, Paris, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time of your busy evening and coming on 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM. Like I said at the beginning of the interview, I'm a very huge fan, so it was an absolute honor just to be able to welcome you on my station. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your newest projects and hope down the line we can make this happen again sometime soon.
All good. It's a two-way street. I appreciate you too, man. It's not for me that are out there that are willing to give this type of material shine. So believe me, you'll appreciate it as well. Thank you much.
You are most certainly welcome. Have yourself a wonderful night, Paris.